What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Get Weird with me, the craziest, weirdest person of all, Brittany Barbieri. Folks, this week we're diving deep and we're going to get weird, so you better buckle up. I'm just going to put that out there. So as you know, I am a field investigator on many different areas of the strange, unknown, bizarre, weird, paranormal, etc. And one of my favorites is Bigfoot. That's one of my favorite things to investigate as a cryptozoologist, and studied under some many beautiful names, wonderful names. And I of course have my own personal theory and take on the matter of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, what it is, especially from the extensive studying, understanding the knowledge, understanding the history, but also getting my own personal hands-on experience in the field and being a field investigator and growing up with wildlife and exotic animals and training and working and all of that, and having a brother who currently is an animal behavioralist and dealing with all of that and growing up wild, as I like to say. You kind of build your own idea of what Sasquatch or Bigfoot could be. Now, I also investigate the supernatural with paranormal hauntings, ghosts, spirits, demons, what have you, and UFOs and aliens and all of that as a ufologist. So my background is extremely extensive, but on today's episode, what I would like to do is step away for a moment and throw some incredible ideas and theories that I personally have thought about over the years for myself. Because sometimes I think we need fresh eyes. Sometimes we need to just take a step back and go, okay, let's just stop for a second and say, we're investigating this for the first time, or we're getting a ton of different opinions, but here's my personal experience in the field. So how then would I navigate, or what would I look into or research into to better understand what I'm dealing with? So what I want to do today is kind of blend a theory of mine from the supernatural investigations that I do in the field, and I have been doing for well over 20 some odd years. Let's not get into details here, folks, on digits and numbers, okay? But what I want to do is strip away the layers, and I want to blend my theory from the supernatural and quantum physics into the theory of Sasquatch. And I know some of you are going to be like, oh, that's it, I'm hanging up. No, don't. I want you just to hear me out and listen to this. I just want to have some fun. I'm going to give you some actual recorded documentation that you can go and research for yourself and read about. And then I just want you to ponder on it. What's fun about this is it's still a realm in which we are learning. It's still a realm in which we are diving into for ourselves and really trying to understand, because it is so unusual. It is so strange. And there is some truth to it. There are some really good, strong cases and stories that really leave you scratching your head. And all of you know I have been doing this for a long time. And a lot of my work was private. A lot of what I do as a cryptozoologist was private. It was something I just love to do as a hobby, as a passion. I have loved Sasquatch, Bigfoot since I was a very, very, very little girl, having an experience at 8 years old. And so it has driven me in hopes of being like Brittany Barbieri with the Bigfoot in the mists. You know what I mean? Like, that's always been a dream of mine. I want these guys to be real, and I love them so much. So let's dive into this, okay, weirdos? You're listening now. You're hooked in. We're gonna sit in this one. This is gonna be a little bit longer, not super long. You can still listen to this on your drive or in the gym, but let's get into it. All right? So let's buckle up, my weirdos. Because we're stepping away from the usual boots on the ground, DNA swab in hand, I need flesh and blood type investigator mode that I'm normally in. And we are going to get into my theory of bending of time with the idea of cryptids, but this specific one, Sasquatch. So let's get into it, okay? And I'm sure you're going to be asking a ton of questions, okay? But let's just start this. So here we go. Let's break this down. So what if Bigfoot is real? Okay, but not in the way that we think. What if Sasquatch existed or exists in a different time layer of our planet altogether? So what people are actually seeing and experiencing are mere time slips. Oh, don't listen. Listen, we got you. Here we go. So I'm going to start breaking this down for you, okay? So before you roll your eyes on me, hold on. Okay, just stay with me. I promise. Okay, so time slips are a reported incident where people appear to momentarily experience another time period altogether. Okay, not metaphorically, not imaginatively, but actually physically being in a different period of time. And we do have documented cases that you can research right now for yourself, right from your little smartphone in your hand. Okay. So the first case that I love, I own their book. I own this case. This was one of the first cases that I fell in love with the idea of time slips, the bending of time. And it drove me to dive deeper into this. Now, this is an older account. This account takes place in 1901 by two English women, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jordan. And I hope I pronounced Moberly's last name correctly. They were walking in Versailles, okay? Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted for them. I'm giving you the cliff notes, people, so you can go read it yourself. The book is amazing. What they did describe for us was that they had an unnatural stillness in the air, strange heaviness, people dressed in 18th century clothing. Now, they were from 1901. The time period of clothing was extremely different. And they were very immersed within this world for a second. And it was an intense emotional pressure, they described, experiencing. One of them later believed that when they were looking back on the period and who they saw and what was going on around them, they actually believed that they saw Marie Antoinette sketching. And they returned to the normal reality with modernized tourists everywhere and just kind of like they were just baffled. So the two of them later published their account in a book called An Adventure. Okay, it's a time slip, an adventure. And now skeptics they're like, that was mere confusion, misinterpretation, fantasy, blah, blah, blah. But here's what interested me about this case. It wasn't just one of them. It was both of them experienced it at the exact same time simultaneously and described the same environmental shifts. They felt everything the same. Now, could this be a joint cognitive confusion, as some not mere scientists have said that it was? Sure, of course. There's always that debate. But for me, the important piece was that they experienced it together. They talked about being in this world for each other, like with each other, and being flabbergasted by it. Now, that key is important because Bigfoot encounters, witnesses often describe very similar instances. Sudden silence in the forest. Now, I can say this. I'm trying to not look at this as a field investigator with animals, because a silence in the forest just means there is a predator and all the prey, including birds, will go extremely quiet and still. So I'm going to separate myself as an animal person and a field investigator and separate that knowledge of being in the field and understanding large prey. Okay. So I'm a nobody now, and I'm paying attention to this and adding in these lines here, okay? So the stillness in the forest, pressure in the air, and feeling that something has shifted, right? And then they have a sighting. Now, is that coincidence, or is that environmental distortion, like a time slip? All right, so let's go to case number 2 for you to look up today. I'm gonna throw some at you, okay, people? You guys are gonna do some reading today. Okay, here we go. So the next one that I love, because there are so many accounts, like it is so prominent with this one. It happens all the time. The Bold Street time slips. Okay, this happens in Liverpool, England. I've been to Liverpool. I love Liverpool. It is such a cool little place. I love it, and I'm a huge Beatles fan, so obviously I'm going to love Liverpool. It was an amazing experience. I truly loved it when I was over there. So over decades, multiple people have reported walking down Bold Street and suddenly finding themselves in a different era, usually between the 1950s and 1960s. Kind of wish that would have happened to me. Freaking love that era, but whatever. I didn't have it happen to me when I was there. When people have these little time slips or these moments where they feel like they're in the 50s or 60s, they do happen to see different storefronts, even different style cars and different clothing. People are wearing different clothing, everything. Then just as quickly that they all of a sudden feel like they're in the 50s, they're back in the present day. There's also another account of a gentleman who went into a bar, came out of the bar, and I don't believe this was on Bold Street, but I believe it was in England. Went into a bar, came out of the bar, or maybe it was New York. Oh, Lord, people, don't quote me on that. But you can look this up because there's a photograph with it. So he goes into the bar, and people are like, oh, he was drunk. He literally had just walked in the bar, forgot something in the car, and went to get out of the car, or go back out to his car. He steps out of the bar. He's in a completely time altogether, different cars, different everything. Even the road structure of where cars are was a little bit different. And he freaked out, goes back in the bar to tell the bartender. It's the same bartender. Then he goes back out, and he's back in his current time frame with his car. But he was smart enough to take a picture on his Allegedly. Let me just put this as allegedly, but this was before AI started like becoming a thing. So, I mean, there could be some merit to it. I'm always open to the weird. Why not? Let's just be frank. So anyway, that part of Bold Street, the repetition matters to me as an investigator because there's patterns that are being repeated across so many witnesses and different periods of time. So obviously as an investigator, I'm like, yep, I'm taking note of that. I'm writing that down. Let's look into this a little bit, right? But here's obviously where it gets weird. If you look at Bigfoot hotspots, they're very similar. So there are areas in North America where sightings repeat over full-length generations, folks, okay? Pacific Northwest, even in parts of Minnesota that you all know I've done work in, and some of it was even recorded for the show. Appalachia is another great place. So we're talking about same locations, different decades, but similar descriptions of what is happening. And to me, these are patterns. These are things you cannot ignore, and you do have to dive a little bit deeper into. You have to take another look at it from a different lens. And that's okay as an investigator. I still have my beliefs of what Bigfoot is, but I am still willing to look at different areas and understanding that the world we live in is dimensional. And we need to consider that when looking at these types of creatures. I still think it's flesh and blood. Please don't misinterpret anything that I'm saying, but I am one of those willing to step out of my own comfort box and listen to somebody else's ideas and theories and see if they hold water. So that's where I'm at with this. So now we're going to enter quantum physics, okay? Now, before you say, Brittany, oh my God, you've lost it. You're another one of those cuckoos that have written books and all this other stuff. Now, just hang on a second. I believe in science in regards of certain areas of the field. We have to be able to have science applied in what we're doing. It's common sense. You just have to. So who do I look at when I do a lot of supernatural investigations? Albert Einstein. Man was a genius, crazy-haired man. Einstein's theory of relativity did teach us that time is not fixed, that it is flexible. It bends with gravity and velocity. So it's not straight. Time itself is not straight. Modern quantum physics even suggests reality at the smallest level behaves in nonlinear, probability-based ways. So there are legitimate scientific discussions about, and I quote, parallel timelines, space-time curvature, and dimensional layering. Now, again, I'm going to repeat myself because I don't want this ever coming back on me where people are like, oh, she believes in dimensional Bigfoot. No, I don't. But I am not saying that Bigfoot is dimensional. But what I am saying is I am willing to have that discussion about the possibility of layering of time and things existing in another period of time, and we're seeing it today. I'm not talking about like an alien, okay, folks? I'm not saying Bigfoot is alien, so let's just calm down. But if time can bend, and physics says it can, then environmental conditions might allow temporary overlaps in our time. So you need to think of time like layers of transparent film stacked on top of each other, okay? And most of the time, separate. Never on top. But what if sometimes those lines, those films touch, okay? So what if Bigfoot is like a time echo, right? So that's a theory. We could go there. What if Sasquatch was a hominid species that existed thousands of years ago? A relic population, maybe? A branch we don't have fossil records of yet? I always like to say that because people are like, we still have bones. It's not real. Yet? We still discover new bones all the time. And do you know that it won't get published and you're not going to learn about it until they get enough data and facts on it and they want to talk about it publicly? So you all don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, let's just break that down. So what if they did live deep in the forests, avoiding humans, today's modernized humans, right? Or like over the periods of time, long before industrialization, okay? Hominids, let's just say, right? And if certain geographic areas have thin time barriers, well, I mean, folks, let's think about that. Places where electromagnetic anomalies happen, geological structures, or tectonic pressure creates distortions, that's a possibility. We have all of those areas. Or when people report and they come in, I saw a massive hairy hominid. It was standing silently, just watching me, and then all of a sudden it vanished without a sound, like I watched it disappear in thin air. Well, that sounds ghostly to me, folks. So what if it didn't just disappear? But what if the overlap of that film of the past and the present ended? The time was up. It was removed. That top film was removed from the film that we're living in today. Because here is something that has always bothered me when I actually stop and think about this as investigations go. I can find predator evidence, right? Large cat scat, fur, blood, claw marks, whatever. And in the case of Sasquatch cases, the creature is often seen very clearly, like right there, and then gone. We do have some hair samples. And you're going to say to me, but there's hair samples. There are alleged scat, like poop samples. Yeah, I said it. Of this alleged creature. Okay. And hair and things like this that prove that we're dealing with something that we don't have in the data. It's something existing out there. You're right. But here's the crazy part. So understanding DNA and data and labs, not all labs carry every single species, depending on the region, the territory, the country, etc. So there are only a handful of labs that actually carry all the DNA specimens of most animals on the planet. They have the access to that, and it's very expensive, by the way, to get those tested. Anyway, but there are tons of animals out there yet we don't know about. Interbreeding, we don't know about. Thank you for, the DNA work and the killing of one. We now know that polar bears and grizzlies are breeding, right? So we have, and here's a little fun fact for people that don't know. When a male polar bear breeds with a female grizzly bear, it's called a pizzly. When a male grizzly bear breeds with a female polar bear, it is known as a growler. So if the male is the dominant, whatever species that is, it's a pizzly or a growler. So there you go. That's always fun. But if we're dealing with an animal that doesn't exist anymore, but existed at a period of time a long time ago, well, if we get that DNA, we're not going to know what that is. We don't have anything in our data because it shouldn't exist. However, people go, well, then that's impossible. So now you're telling me that we have matter of something in this timeline. How did we get that? But we don't, you know what I mean? So now you're like, oh, now I'm marveling it up over here with quantum, right? Quantum dimension. But this can actually be proven from work being done on time slips in the bending of time in Gettysburg, where individuals have collected blood samples of somebody they just saw on the ground in their home. The blood is still on the floor, but the person is gone. It's a different type of matter. And I have been studying and working on different techniques on how to have an object in this time as well as the past, and having it as an object that both areas can see at the same time, because it's a different type of matter that we are breaking down within different time elements. It's a really deep study that I've done. I apply it in my work, and let me tell you, it's brain bending. I will tell you that. But once you're open to try it, and once you're open to do it, it will really blow your mind. I was able to do these tests with Jack Osborne and Kelly Osborne in Virginia City with a cue ball from a billiard ball, basically from the location. And I want you all to know we were in -9 degrees in that building. There's no heater, there's no air conditioning, broken windows, snow was blowing in on the second floor. Our toes were like falling off, and any of them can contest to this and be like, oh my God, yeah. Like we would have to break and literally put our toes out of our shoes by heaters. Like it was that cold. You don't even know. And out of nowhere, that I set that ball. We made sure nobody was in that room. We wanted it to be alone on purpose to set there and give it time. And when we were in that room for a long period of time watching this ball, it literally started to heat up. I mean, we were very adamant. Nobody get near this ball. I am placing it down. No one touch it. Leave it alone. Like we are watching, right? We had cameras set up everywhere. And we watched it. Jack was like, hey, the ball is getting hot. Now that is just impossible. There's no heater. It was, when I tell you impossible, by every stretch of the means impossible. However, it wouldn't have been hot if it was in a different period of time. The matter had broken into a different world, but a different layer of our time. And something was touching it. Then it would heat up. So there's all these things that we have to look at. And we're doing it by different tests of different ways of doing it. And I'm not asking you to agree with me. And I'm sure some of you are like, oh, you're insane. I can explain why I heated up, blah, 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 because everybody's a Google expert. But when you've done this as long as I have done, I have seen things I cannot explain, and I have to write it down, and I have to try and figure it out from a scientific perspective, from every single way possible, so that my brain doesn't hurt. But that was something that made us all go, that's interesting. That is something to take note of. And we also have to understand that there are certain things that are made that's a different type of matter than our matter, like our body structure. So that's something also to think about. So I get, again, why people immediately are like, well, there's no sound of it escaping, crashing bushes, and the physical trace of this thing is gone. And, when you think about hearing a bear in the woods, yeah, I get it. You sometimes do and sometimes don't. If you are a predator species in the forest, you have to learn how to manage your weight. And this is something that comes from understanding animals that I have learned growing up in an exotic animal life with animals my whole life with my family, and my brother being an animal behavioralist. These are things that I have learned and been taught and trained that when I'm in the field, here's what a predator does. So you can literally walk up on the back of a bear and not even realize it, because you wouldn't hear that bear. That bear is trained to literally walk with ease, and you won't hear him crunching through the forest because he is a predator. They have to be stealth in order to keep up on their prey, so their prey doesn't run away and they don't starve to death. Same as mountain lions and all these different types of predators. Now, prey, my God, if you've ever been in the bushes and heard freaking a possum coming through or an armadillo, you'd swear to God that was a giant grizzly bear pummeling through, and then this little cute little quirky thing comes out, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's because it's a prey. They don't think about being quiet all the time. Like, it's just a difference of learning prey and predator behavior. So when people are like, I would hear a Sasquatch, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Now, that's where very hard for me to step away from the time slip and all that, right? And going into predator mode. It doesn't matter. We were talking about let's say 400 or 500 pound, hominid, bipedal, standing there. And if it's a predator and you're its prey, or it's a predator and it's trying to sneak up on prey or whatever it eats, it's going to be quiet. It's going to have learned this trait to learn how to literally walk with ease in the forest, and you're not going to hear it. So that is something I have to say. Like, so when I hear that, I'm like, oh, but a bear could walk up on you and you wouldn't know it. And people think you would, but that's just not, if you haven't spent time in the woods and you haven't spent time with large animals, you just wouldn't get that. You wouldn't understand that. And that's not a problem. That's just understanding that. So anyway, so if we think about time slips and we want to apply that and take away the common biological understanding of predators and what that means, then yes, we could really look at it as, it vanishing out of nowhere so quietly with ease in a different time, because it wasn't fully there. We're looking again at that film being placed on top of the current film, okay? And then it's just gone. So even when I do this in the paranormal with cases, I'm not saying that all ghosts are not dead spirits or entities, but I do believe that a majority of some of these really strong, prominent, what people say are class A interactions with what they say are dead people, I don't believe they're dead. I firmly believe we are dealing with a period of time slipping. And I think that there are certain areas, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, that really just amplify that as a battery. And it allows it to happen all the time, especially when we get these hiccups in our time, like full-bodied apparition, dressed in period clothing, unaware of the observer near them, or they are aware and their eyes get really big, right? Or repeating the same actions in the same location over and over again, right? I think we're just seeing what happened, and we're seeing a glimpse into the past, and they don't realize you're there, and some of these cases can be ripped apart when you hear footsteps. Okay, but nobody's there. I don't think a ghost is just stomping their feet like, hey, watch me get Debbie. Oh, I got her. No, that's not how this works. That's not what I believe. That's not at all what I believe. We can go tit for tat on that. It's just not what I believe. And I just think that if you open your mind a little bit, you'll start to see those holes, as you will, where you're like, you know what, that doesn't make sense. And as long as I've been doing this, some of these things just don't make sense. But when I look at time slipping and our current timeline, they start to make sense. So if we're looking at something like, not something like a consciousness, right? Like, let's look at the framework and then apply it to Sasquatch. So if someone's sighting, okay, hold on. What if somebody sights something, right? Then they are like, it looked like it was living. It was like a breathing creature, okay? But it still doesn't have to be in our timeline. We could be looking at something from a different timeline altogether, interbleeding into our current timeline. So that, we're talking, and what's interesting is this could happen all the time and we don't even realize it with like different accounts or different things, and we're just not paying attention to it, right? So when people are like, how come we never see ancient people? That's not true. There are full reports in different countries of people seeing what they thought were Aztec and full-blown like Maya people. I mean, there are legends of this. There are stories and reported stories of like people seeing like people walking in the bushes that shouldn't exist anymore. You know what I mean? So we could apply this to so many different areas of our world all over. If you just research all of these different accounts, you can easily apply the time slip into it. So obviously, if you look at why we can't catch one, okay, either it's extremely intelligent and it has outsmarted us 1,000%, which I firmly believe. I think it's trained within their DNA, obviously, to like just stay away from humans. Humans have done horrible things. Humans are monsters. Let's just be real. I'm not a fan of humans, and I am one, but majority of the things on this planet that will do the most destruction isn't animals. It's humans. So let's just put that in perspective. And if I was a Sasquatch, I'd freaking stay away from them. That's just what I'd say. So let's go into the time slipping, right? So if this theory holds any water, even 5% possibility, this would explain why thermal sometimes fails, why cameras catch something blurry, why footprints just stop in the middle of mud and have no exit point. Not up a tree, not into the ground, not into a cave. Like, it doesn't fly. Thing doesn't fly. So why do they just stop? Why do dogs lose a scent abruptly, right? I mean, I could put that into a different area of field work as well, but I won't. Let's just stay on the time slip, okay? I'm just bringing up topics that people ask. And that's important. We have to pay attention to what people are asking, what they're saying. And that's important to listen to what they're saying. And we can apply that to our own work, to what we're doing. And I know you're going to keep circling back, but what about your own DNA work? Then why do it? Well, it's because I still believe that it really is biological. It is still something with a body. I still firmly believe that. And as someone who has collected DNA and constantly collect DNA, and I still do that for my own field work because I know how science works, I know how scent traits behave. But the older I get, the more I realize that sometimes we have to take a step back because science is very layered. And there could be some layered truth to what I'm dealing with when we're looking at these types of animals that may or may not exist in our time frame. I refuse to dismiss repeated cross-cultural witness accounts simply because they don't fit neatly into one model. The world is just weird, folks. And weird doesn't mean it's impossible. And you have to think about this. The forest is older than us. It just always is. So maybe Bigfoot is flesh and blood. Or maybe Bigfoot is a surviving hominid. Maybe it's a time slip phenomenon. Or maybe, and this is my favorite possibility, it's all of the above. A real species that occasionally intersects with strange physics. Because here's the thing, folks. The forest goes silent for a reason. And every investigator who has spent enough time alone in the woods literally knows that something like this could be possible. Because sometimes it feels like you stepped into something ancient, not haunted or not even haunted. It's just older than you and shifted. Something just feels off, right? It's just a feeling you get. So anyway, folks, that's all I got for today. So next time you're deep in the woods and everything goes extremely quiet, you need to ask yourself, did I just walk up on something that's a predator that wants to hunt me? Or did I possibly just shift into a different time? Check your watch, check your placing, check where you are, pay attention to details that you may or may not have paid attention to before. Details are one of the key factors in all of time slipping. So, this is Get Weird with your favorite weirdo, Brittany Barbieri, and until next time, my friends, I hope to see you in the next layer.